So, welcome back to episode 6 of the Half and Half Scarf Football Podcast with me, Nick, and my mate Dom. We're not going to go over the backstory. You probably know by now how we met and why the Half and Half Scarf is Middlesbrough Everton. If you don't, please listen to episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll get the backstory there. What I would like to say is we are delighted with the support we're getting from people and the fact that we're now on iTunes and Spotify and Apple Music as well as YouTube. So loads of options for people to view or watch or listen to the podcast. And we get some tremendous feedback from people over the first 5 episodes. So thank you for your support. But without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. We've got two things we're going to talk about because it's the start of the season when we're recording this. Just kicked off the Championship first weekend and the Premier League hasn't started yet as we record this. But what represents success to fans and what represents success to clubs? And is there a disconnect between those two things? And the other one, which is fixture lists and the Sky fixture timings. The two are not necessarily interlinked, but we are going to talk about fixture lists and fixture timings around Sky TV. So without further ado, Dom, welcome back. That is a tremendous looking shirt you've got on there, mate.
Yeah, hi Nick. Glad to be back again. Can't believe it's episode 6 already. This is in celebration of our recent trip to Rangers pre-season, Middlesbrough. We had a fantastic day. All the Rangers fans made us feel really welcome. In fact, everyone I spoke to in Glasgow, Celtic and Rangers fans, because we wore our tops, they were brilliant with us all day. I had some really good banter. This is a classic remake, I think 2007, of the 1972 European Cup Winners' Cup top. Umbro classic, really simple, no messing. They've
Good
took the
stuff.
sponsor there as well, not this great big one across the middle, but it's just simple, all blue. I love this kit. But I don't really wear it, but I'm wearing it in celebration to say thank you to the Rangers fan. And the guys who I was chatting to on the train on the way up, Scott, his son Alex, and Simon. If you're listening, lads, thank you very much for the journey. You made it very interesting. So that's my shirt.
Excellent. Well, in honour of the fact that yesterday we kicked off the Championship season with a home victory against Swansea, I'm wearing my home Middlesbrough shirt. We don't often get a home victory on the first game of the season. We had one last season, funnily enough, against Swansea, but it had been 11 years before that we'd won our first home game of the season. So great to get off to a good start. I'm wearing the shirt in honour of that. But let's crack on with what we want to talk about, Dom, as ever. And I just think at the start of the season, it's one of those things where fans start talking about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, HMS Pistol League, we're going to smash this, we're going to get into Europe and all that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if there's a disconnect between the expectations of the fans and what represents success to a club, because the club might take a different perspective in terms of financial success, but the fans might take a different perspective in terms of on the pitch success. I don't know, what's your headline thought on that, mate?
I do think there's often a disconnect. I actually think clubs and fans work better together when they're in harmony in terms of their expectations and what they want to achieve. They need to be on the same page. I think it can be destructive when you're not. I can use the example from an Everton perspective of when Farhad Moshiri bought the club in 2016. I think there was a disconnect in terms of I actually think he thought that he could just buy success and we would sail up the league and be a powerful, all singing, all dancing team that would start to win things. Some fans, I think, actually thought that would happen or could happen. I think most were realistic that it wouldn't. And very quickly, there was a disconnect in terms of spending silly money on lots and lots of players, most that didn't, we had an influx of midfielders in 2017. A lot of them we didn't need, massive transfer fees, huge wages. When actually we lost Lukaku in 2017, we needed a striker. We didn't get one. And instantly that was like a downward spiral. So I think where that led was in the end, it led to huge disharmony between the owner and the fans.
Mm.
Eventually, it actually transpired that you felt that the owner was still trying to sort of buy his way through it, and the fans could see that that's not what was happening.
Mm.
Our league position was getting lower and lower and lower. We were underperforming in cups. And then I think it became clear that Moshiri was struggling because he couldn't buy the players that we needed. It turned into a huge mess, which I think most neutrals will know if they've read about the Everton fiasco over the years before we got bought out by the Americans. So I think yes, I think you need to be. I'll go back to my first point. You need to be both on the same page for it to work.
I think you need the realism as well, don't you, of
Yeah,
what is an expectation. So we had that at Borough the season that Gary Monk took over. We'd had a couple of years of Pulis ball. Just don't even get me on that. I've tried to erase that from my memory. But we did get into the playoffs and failed to turn up twice against Aston Villa. And then we had the following season Pulis ball, and it was just, horrific, really. And when Gary Monk took over, having had a semi-reasonably successful stint at Leeds and almost getting them to the playoff success that they were craving at the time. Steve Gibson, our chairman, came out and sort of, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said, we're going to give this a right good go, and we're going to, almost like we're going to march to the automatic kind of promotion. And it just didn't happen. But when the fans buy into that, you've set yourself up to fail anyway, haven't you? Because the fans start getting really aggy about, well, you said we're going to do this, you said we're going to do that. I couldn't fault them. We paid a club record and I think a championship record fee for 15 million quid for Britt Assombalonga at the time, and typical Borough, we signed a guy who could score goals for fun anywhere else, and just, I think the net must be in a different place at the Riverside because he couldn't hit camel's arse with a banjo when he played for us many weeks. But he backed the manager. We ended up sacking Gary Monk at Christmas because we started off so badly. And then it just became just a whole cycle of, downward spiral. But, he's been held out to ransom by some fans who've never forgiven him for that expectation set that was probably unrealistic. Yeah.
It was. I think he was trying to be upbeat in terms of we'd just come back down from the Premier League. We had the parachute money. And I think he wanted to show the fans that he was willing to spend some of that money to try and bounce back. But it just didn't quite work. The only good signing we really got out of that window was Johnny Howson. That was the best signing we got. But everyone else was extremely underwhelming. But at the time, I remember we were really positive because of Sambalonga. We were all really excited, I remember at the time.
Yeah.
It just didn't transpire the way we all wanted it to. I think some fans can be brutal in terms of they just, if it doesn't work out, they spit their dummy and they become quite intolerant very, very quickly. I go back to what I've always said. I think, I'm quite a calm, patient person, and my expectations aren't much. I for Middlesbrough, a good season for us is where we're doing really well, we're competing, and we've got a good chance of a playoff spot. We're not top two material. We're not strong enough. We can't compete with that yet. I think, and I do love a good cup run. I think every championship club does, but I think the fans also, I always find it with Middlesbrough, they're never too bothered if we do get knocked out because they just enjoy the ride. Maybe there's a couple of, big scalps in terms of Premier League clubs, but I think there's always the eye on, we'd rather focus on the league and go up. So I actually think most fans at Borough are quite good. I think they just want to see us get up to the Premier League. And I think they probably know that we'll come back down, but just enjoy the ride, going to different places again. I never understand, Nick, this thing where you hear people say, I much prefer the Championship. Well, it's like, that's fine, but what are you in it for then? If all you're happy to do is stay in the Championship forever, you should have no expectations. But as a fan, isn't that why you go? Yes, you want to see your team play really good football, score some great goals, have a memorable day. But surely you want to. It's the excitement of building something where that season's going. Surely that's the point.
It is, but I'm going to apologise for those listening who've now shouted at the audio or the video saying that I got my Pulis in the wrong order. I said I've been trying to forget him. To be fair, he came after Gary Monk. Obviously,
Yes.
Gary Monk was appointed when we after Karanka and the Premier League sort of relegation, but he didn't last long either. And Tony Pulis, I've tried to erase from my memory, so I apologise for those listening, shouting at the screen and shouting at the audio, going, "You don't know what you're talking about." I do. I've been to all those games throughout that time. It just all melds into one when you're just a mid-table disappointment from time to time. So I'll apologise on behalf of that. But let's move on to success and what represents success. I've got a teasing question. I've heard it posed on various media, talk sport and podcasts, etc. It comes down to fans' expectations and success. So did Arsenal have a better season than Spurs last year? Because as a club, you categorically say yes, you would. You know, Arsenal finished second in the league and generated the revenues from that. They were close to being, um, you know, pushing Liverpool until they fell away a little bit, kind of around Easter time. But who remembers clinching second place? You know, when you're away at Fulham or Brentford on a Tuesday night and secure second place. Spurs are in the Champions League and they won a trophy, a European trophy. So, you know, who do you think had a better season last year?
Spurs, because they won something. Because
Wow.
football for me is it's all for the fans. It is for the fans. If you're not playing for the fans and trying to win something for them, yes, the players want to win stuff as well. But let's face it, if the players were winning stuff and no fans were there to celebrate with, it's a pointless exercise.
Mm,
So, as dreadful as Spurs season was, and Spurs fans, if you're listening, just own up to that. It was an awful Premier League season. You were dreadful. And let's face it, to be honest, that was the worst Europa League final I've ever watched in my life as well. But you still won something. You still had to go through the rounds and beat
mm.
all the teams and win something. So I would categorically say Spurs had the better season because they actually won a trophy. And the rewards at the end of it, whether you think they deserve it or not, is they got a Champions League spot for this season.
Yeah.
So that in terms of fan buy-in is exciting. You know, they've had a brilliant day out watching that final with their team winning a trophy. It's been a long time since they won a trophy. They're not going to care how they won it. Yes, they'd have loved it to be a really good final against top opposition, a memorable game. It wasn't, but they still got over the line and won. So I think you'd have to say Spurs had the better season, without a doubt.
There's a line in the history books that says Spurs Europa League champions 2024-25, didn't they? So,
Yeah,
and the one that you can't take that away. I don't think anybody ever looks and goes, who finished second in the Premier League or third or fourth? Arsene Wenger was always happy to finish fourth, wasn't he? That was his criticism. In the
yeah,
end, you know,
yeah,
finishing fourth was classed as a trophy to Arsenal
yeah.
at that time, and it isn't. Fans don't care. Tell me now if Crystal Palace fans would have happily finished a little bit higher up the league and got a bit more money, because they always finish 12th, Palace, don't they? Always.
Yeah.
If they'd finished eighth and had a good run at the Europa League or the Conference, but didn't win the FA Cup, you're not telling me their fans would be happier. They absolutely love the fact that they are FA Cup winners for the first time in their history. Surely success is measured in by fans is measured in memories, isn't it?
Of course it is. Every time. I totally agree with you. They're not looking at the money the club brings in. Yes, they want to be safe, they want to be sound, they want to be stable. I'm sure they'd like to do better than finishing, 12th, and they do finish mid-table most seasons. But absolutely, I mean, they won it in style and they had a fantastic day. The fans were brilliant, and Palace fans are brilliant, by the way. They just
Mm.
are at their place and away. They really love their club. They'll remember this forever. That's a fantastic thing. And more importantly, that's in their club history now. That's what you play football for. That's what the clubs want. They want things like that. For most clubs, there's only three things to play for. And realistically, most clubs start that season knowing there's actually only two things to play for.
Yeah.
So if you manage to win one of them, that's amazing. That's what you'd rather have. Look at Newcastle. Absolute limbs, scenes everywhere when they won the league. And rightly so. They're a
Yeah.
big club. They've waited a long time. Yes, people might say, "Oh, it's only the League Cup." Well, people who say that, I'm sorry, that's just being bitter.
Mm.
They won a trophy. They won it well. They did well throughout that whole competition, and they deserved it. Their fans will remember that forever. And again, it's in history. Can't take it away, can you?
Quick question. I'm not sure. Did Newcastle win something last year? Because I didn't see much about it, mate. I think it was fair to say it must have got under my radar because it wasn't like it was bloody everywhere forever. Anyway, well done, Newcastle. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a bitter Borough fan at all. North East club doing well, winning it, and deserved it on the day because I watched the game, and you know what? They deserved the result against
They
Liverpool.
did.
And they deserve to win the trophy and enjoy it. I've got quite a few mates who are Newcastle fans, and their day at Wembley for the first time winning it was, for a long, long time, was tremendous for them. So, but here's a question. Then it leads on to it: why do teams in the Premier League in particular, with absolutely no danger of going down and very little chance of European success, still pick a completely different or weakened 11 in the League Cup or the FA Cup, which represents one of those two chances that you mentioned of silverware. So if I was one of the fans of Brighton, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brentford, and indeed Everton, mate, I'd be livid if you put out a weakened team in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds of cups that are your one route to success, and particularly when you're playing teams that your first team would, should, and could beat. Why do they do it? Does that not hack you off?
Oh, it does. In fairness, over the last few years, I've not seen Everton do it. Everton do try to put a strong team out in all the cup competitions. I think in the League Cup they do sometimes start with their reserve goalie, and they might swap the odd person around. And obviously in the early rounds they'll try and give different players a run out. And then if the game's not going to plan, you'll see, the first team players creep onto the pitch with half an hour to go. But I think from the fourth, fifth round onwards, they field a full team because they want to do well. They
Mm,
absolutely know, and linked to, fans and club being aligned. The club actually absolutely want to win a trophy for the fans, and they know they've got those two are the best ways of doing it. But oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think all these clubs will come out and tell you that it's about, oh well, we've got a squad, we need to use them. All these players need game time. Like, that comes back to what we said before. Well, you actually don't need a squad of 30 players, really. You just
mm,
need a squad of probably 16 to 18. And, you know, if you're playing them sensibly, you could just play the same team. But then your bigger teams like Man City and all the rest of it will say, well, it's just kind of an inconvenience because it comes into too many games that we're playing and we're in too many competitions. Well, that's disrespecting the competitions for a start,
mm.
because they get to the later rounds, they do play their full teams, and they also damage the game because they're the ones who've managed to get it down to no replays now.
Oh,
So, and which is again another subject in itself in terms of penalising the lower league teams. So yeah, I don't agree with it, mate, at all. It's just an excuse that we need to play these players. Well, don't have big squads then, because you don't
yeah,
actually need a big squad, do you? And they don't.
no. It's not just about trophy success, though. Let's take it down a division. Let's take it to the Championship, okay? And last season, Bristol City qualified for the Championship playoffs for the first time. I think it's in 13 or 14 years, certainly a long time. Um, so the club look at that and the fans look at that and they say, that's progress. Bristol City are very well versed in the fact that they are a Premier League aspirational club. They've got a great stand, they've got good support, they've got great ground, they've spent a lot of money on improvements, and they are Premier League ready, but they've never been anywhere near Premier League standard. So they get to the playoffs, championship playoffs, and get absolutely dicked 6-0 off Sheffield United over two legs. The worst result in championship playoff history. So I'm a fan of Bristol City, right? What am I thinking? Am I thinking, why bother? Or am I still happy with the progress? Because that's embarrassing, isn't it? Or not? I don't know what classes as
Um,
progress or not.
I don't think any fan wants to see their team lose 6-0 over two legs after a long, grueling season, which the Championship is. I don't think you want to see your team bow out like that. It comes down to your classic metric, isn't it? You want to see your team compete. If you lose over the two legs, but you've really given it a go, yeah, some fans might say that's harder to swallow. I don't agree with that. I'd much rather bow out having given this team a really good go than just knowing I've just capitulated after the first leg, essentially. I think it's progress. I think most Bristol Philly. I'd be really surprised if most Bristol City fans didn't see that as a really good season under Liam Manning. I think they had a really good season. I think he's a talented manager. I understand why he's gone back to Norwich. Norwich is his club. That's where he's from. But, but for the first time, they dug in and stayed the distance, played some good football.
Mm.
But I think they were. I'm not sure if they were. I was surprised they lost as heavily as they did, Nick. I thought they would give it much more of a game. I thought they were really in it. Strange how as we're recording this, they walloped Sheffield United. Was it 4-1
Yeah.
yesterday? First game, and apparently they were astonishing as well. So
Mm.
I'm not sure about what their squad depth is. Championship squad depths aren't huge, are they, in terms of resources? Um, Maybe it was just a step too far at that time. Maybe it was a nerves thing, an experience thing. Sheffield United had been there and done that many times before.
Yeah.
I think it's progress. I think that their fans will want to be doing the same again, staying in that remit of top six, see if they can go again, and just see if they can creep in. Why not?
So that there, I agree with that. I just wonder, they just write off that two-leg thing and said, well, let's forget it. It didn't
Yeah,
happen. But what they've done is they've proven they can get over the line to qualify for the playoffs. So I think
yeah,
that might be the progress that they'll
yeah.
take
That's
then,
progress. Yeah,
which
that's
takes them into progress for this season, right? Okay, I get
yeah,
that. Now, that's fine. Now, what about promoting clubs into the Premier League this year? We know the last 2 years, all six promoted clubs have come down, mostly with a whimper, with the odd exception. I thought Luton gave it a fist the season they came down. They just had such a small squad, such a small budget. They were never going to stay up, but they gave it a go. But every other club's come down, presumably with a whimper, really, effectively not even troubled the scorers. Now, I know that every single club chairman, board member would take 17th right now in the boardroom in the Premier League and say 17th is good enough for us. And yet you still hear some fans of the likes of Sunderland and Leeds particularly saying 17th, no, we're a big club, we want more, we should be in the top half. Now, there's a fan of a big club who's got a few delusions of the fact that the Premier League might be harder than they think it is. Is 17th in the Premier League in your first season back success for the fan and for the club?
yes, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with wanting more. There's nothing wrong with aspiring to more. But it's really hard. The Premier League, it's a significant jump up. Not many teams give it a good go in their first season. I mean, sometimes there's the odd surprise. Sheffield United a few seasons ago under Wilder had a really good first season, then
Mm,
sank like a stone in the second. Just because you do quite well in the first isn't a measure that you've embedded yourself and you're going to do well for years to come. Premier League's not like that anymore. It's changed. Whereas, you know, teams like Brentford have bucked the trend a bit where they've come up, established themselves, and have started to do well. Fulham have been impressive under Marco Silva. Um, but last season still wobbled a bit. They were still heading down there for a while. Crystal Palace were down there for a while. It's a hard league. Even clubs that have been there for a long time,
mm.
or 4, 5, 6 years, can suddenly just drop like a stone. I'm also putting Everton in that. We've been, you know, dancing the flames for a few years now, and just because we've got this new stadium, Moyes is back and he's fully into pre-season. Everything else that goes with that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be, playing safe and way away from the relegation zone.
Mm.
So I'd be surprised if a Sunderland fan's been saying that because I'd be like, well, actually, I think there is a bit of a delusion there because for Sunderland, if I was a Sunderland fan, I'd absolutely be saying if we finish 17th, I'd be more than happy because the squad they finished with last season, they'd get rolled over and be down straight away. Whether the new players they've brought in add stability to that squad and that team remains to be seen.
Mm.
I think that's very difficult in terms of bedding in new players and quite a few into the Premier League.
I guarantee that in the last weekend of the season in May, if Leeds, Burnley, or Sunderland have to win to stay up and they win, there'll be limbs. So in
Of
some
course, they will.
respects, they
Yeah,
forget their August ambitions for the reality of 17th in May. And I think that's fine. It should be. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong. We'd all take 17th as a first season back in the Premier League. What you've got to
of
do
course.
then is not stay in that relegation trouble for the next 5 years and fight and fight and fight. You want to be more established, like your Brentfords, your Bournemouths, and your Fulhams. Okay, let's look at Birmingham City and to a lesser extent Wrexham as well. Actually, they're both ambitious, they're both hungry, and they're both very rich in comparison to other clubs of their sort of size and stature. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, and I've got absolutely nothing wrong with the stated aims of that club. The clubs to say that we want to get to the Premier League, the promised land of the Premier League. But Birmingham in particular, their fans have got this bought into. This season, we're going to win the league. We're going to promotion. We're on the promotion train, and it's all about us. We've got loads of money and all that kind of thing. They lack a bit of class when it comes, for me, to understanding that the Championship is a slightly less hard version of the Premier League, but it's a grind. It's an absolute nightmare. Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. If you're a Birmingham fan, would you accept missing out on the playoffs if you finish seventh or eighth in your first season back in the Championship. The club probably would in this year, but would the fans?
The fans should. Um, Absolutely. I mean, let's look at Birmingham over the last few years. They've hardly covered themselves in glory, have they? I mean, they were sailing high when they had Gary Rowett replaced him with Gianfranco Zola. That was
Yeah.
just a heads gone moment. Gianfranco Zola's never been a manager, and everyone outside of Birmingham City knew that that was going to end badly, and it did. And
Hmm.
then they did the same again with John Eustace. Absolute heads gone moment again. Whether you whether you invested in the manager or not, he was doing really well. So when a club's doing really well, do you change that? No, you don't.
No.
No one should change it because there's especially with new owners, and they always try and convince people that they know best. They don't. And I think Birmingham's owners learnt that lesson pretty quickly and pretty harshly because it cost them going down to a different league.
Yeah.
Um, if there are Birmingham fans out there saying that, then they want their heads read because they're not going to win the league. Absolutely not. I can tell you right now, they're not going to win the league. They're just not good enough or strong enough or experienced enough. Do you know what? If I'm proven wrong, I'll happily hold my hands up at the end of the season and say, fantastic, well done, Birmingham. But in my heart of hearts, knowing the Championship, I just can't see that happening. So, yes, if you were a Birmingham fan, absolutely. If you could go through in the playoffs or just miss out, that's a very good season back because it shows that actually you've come back up, you've bedded in, your players are good enough, the club's got the right attitude now in terms of where they want to head to. So the season after that, then you'd like to think, okay, we'll kick on.
Mm.
But as me and you both know, Nick, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes you can have a really good season in the Championship, and the next season, for whatever reason, you might lose the odd player or the blend of players the following year. It doesn't add up. It's not your year. I
Mm.
think Wrexham fans, and I've spoken to a few, none I've spoken to have any cocky expectations. I
Mm.
think they really love the 3 season ride. If it happens again, all credit to them. I'll take my hat off. I've loved watching their story, and I'd be happy for them to go up. But I think they're happy enough to bed in, settle themselves, compete with the league, and then go from there.
I listened to a Wrexham podcast the other day, just out a bit of research and stuff, and they were saying that they're not allowed to use the C word consolidation because Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds don't like the word consolidation because it smacks of a lack of ambition, and I sort of like that, but
I like,
I think the reality, I like the realism of
yeah,
the fact that consolidation would be great. A Wrexham fan right now, I think a proper Wrexham fan, and I'm talking about game going fans, not social media keyboard warriors.
yeah, of
They would take 14th all day long.
course they would.
I don't think many Birmingham fans would do the same. I think they've got this ambition of being, we're Birmingham, we're a massive club. Well, I don't know any historic massive clubness associated with Birmingham. For me, they've lived in the shadow of Villa for 1,000 years. So I'm not trying to have a go at Birmingham fans. I'm just saying be humble, be realistic, and just calm down a little bit. You didn't even win your first game of the season at home under the lights, dodgy refereeing aside. So just calm down, be humble, because everybody else is looking at you and laughing, particularly if you don't make it. So fan expectations can annoy other people just because they're not realistic in the first instance. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Absolutely. I think with everything Birmingham have gone through, the fact that they're in a place now where their owners are looking to elevate them further, want to build a big stadium, want them to bed in and become a big club, want to invest in good players. It's really exciting for the fans. They've been through hard times, Birmingham fans. I mean, they really have. I'm glad that they've got something to really get hold of and be excited about. I get that. I wish that for every fan. But I agree with you. Do it with a bit of class and, be humble and realistic expectations.
Yeah.
I haven't I'll hold my hands up. I haven't heard any Birmingham fans come out and be cocky. You may have done, but I'm
Oh,
sure there's some out there. But I'd like to think the vast majority are probably quietly sensible and thinking, let's just see how we go.
there's a difference between game going fans and social media armchair fans. And I believe it's the social media armchair fans who do it just to get a rise, just to do it, get a like. I think if I went to Birmingham City and interviewed Birmingham City fans around the stadium for a home game and said, "What's your realistic ambitions?" I think most of them, the game-going fans, would say, "We'd love a little go at the playoffs. We'd love a push at the playoffs. We might get there, we might not. But you know what? I don't think any of them are talking about automatic. I think we've got a lot to blame Ipswich for because Ipswich was sensational the season they went up season before last. But that is very, very unusual, isn't it? Southampton, Wolves, Ipswich. I think they're the three in the last 20 years who've gone straight from League One right through the Championship in one go. And because they've done it, people now go, oh, well, we can do it. Well, it's rare. It's not regular. Stop thinking about it. Stop, just get back to reality. Final question on this first half. Well, I'll come back to Everton and Borough in a second. So is success something of a disconnect between clubs and fans? Going back to what we said at the start, do you think fans and clubs have different expectations this season, not just on trophies, but on league position and aspirations and who they should sign and whether they're a big enough club to attract the right people? What do you think?
You mean for this season coming up?
Every season, really. I think, it strikes me, my view is it strikes me that, clubs have got a plan, but fans have got that kind of energy, and that the fans are often ahead of the club in terms of what their expectations are. Sometimes the club are dragging fans with them, and the fans don't believe it because they've had the story sold to them so many times. If you think about Leeds, when they're in the doldrums under various, shall we say, dodgy owners, subjective owners, or whatever, their ambition was, God, can we just not be this laughing stock of a team in the League One and the Championship? They get Bielsa and suddenly everybody gets behind it, and then that ambition becomes real. And they've been up and down, whatever. But you can't deny that the energy's back at Leeds United as a result of the fans now being back on board. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Yeah, I think at Everton, I think it's aligned this year. David Moyes is a good communicator. I think one thing I've always, and missing this from the first time round and then seeing him come back, his expectations, I think, are very much aligned with the fans. The fact that we're the players that we've bought, I think David Moyes knows that we're not going to be top six, but he's openly said last season it's not impossible for Everton, if we get it right and sign the right players, to do what Notts Forest have been doing. Why not? They haven't brought any world-class players. They've just got a really good blend in the team. Got everyone playing the right way. Chris Wood firing the goals. Yes, they've lost Elanga this season. That might change for them. And Gibbs White, he's signed a new contract. Hope that'll go well for them. But they bought the right kind of players that all blended together, and it worked. That's what I think Everton are trying to achieve, and that's what I think the fans' expectation is. Any fans who suddenly think we're going to suddenly, be up there competing top six, I'd be slightly concerned with that. I think what David Moyes wants is to really bed in, be solid, not be anywhere near the relegation zone, be in the top half most of the season, and then go from there and see if we can get a solid gel team. I think you can also tell sometimes what the club's intention is, and that the fans are buying in, because we're actually trying to sign players that last year would never have gone anywhere near. Dewsbury Hall wouldn't have come anywhere near Everton last year. He signed a 5-year contract. He believes in what the project is ahead, believes in Moyes. Yes, the stadium might attract the players, but let's be honest, it's still a stadium at the end of the day.
Yeah.
When Arsenal moved into theirs, they didn't achieve success for over 10 years when they moved into their new stadium.
Yeah.
But what I liked is we've tried to sign and put a bid in for John McGinn. Everton would never have done that last year. And I'm not saying Villa will sell him. In fact, they probably won't. But I like the fact that they've cheekily thought, well, we want him. We think he's a really good player. He'd be mustard for us, by the way. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Will he come? I very much doubt it. But the fact that we've kind of put a bid in, perhaps laid seeds in the player's mind or the club's mind. He's 30 years old, out of contract in 2 years. That, for me, is good thinking and good and a good strategy from the club. We're after Grealish as well. I think I think the philosophy is get good midfielders in, get good forward players, and hopefully that'll service that. We've bought Thurno Barry from Villarreal. We've got Beto. Yes, we still look like we're lacking an ability to score freely. That was evident yesterday in the pre-season friendly. It's been evident all pre-season. But if you have good midfield players, flair players, that can create the goals really quickly. I'm not sure we're going to get a worldie of a striker in the door. So I think Next season, I think we are aligned. Strong mid-table and above, bed in, no relegation issues, good cup run. Everton always want a good cup run, always. Middlesbrough, I think it's a bit tricky, mate. I think there's always an edge of people who really, really want us to be top six in there, comfortable. I don't think any fan thinks we're capable of top two. I don't think we're top two material. I just don't think we're strong enough. I
No.
do think I've always said for years, I think we've got good enough players for top six, but sadly, our consistency always lets us down. It's shot us in the foot for the last few years because on our day, we are probably one of the best teams in that league, but we just don't do it consistently enough. And I think that's still the question going into this season.
I think my issue with the expectation of Borough is new manager, new sort of coaching team. He wasn't many people's first choice, but everything he's done in pre-season and he's done yesterday, he's doing all the right things. He's an emotional guy. He's got a good sort of grasp of PR and all that kind of thing. And yesterday we played okay. We played a little bit different to what we've been used to. Bit more direct, bit more, higher up the pitch, that kind of thing. What I would say about Rob Edwards is, because Borough fans are probably the most fickle fans I've ever met, is he needs to get off to a good start, because if he doesn't get off to a good start, they'd be like, oh, I told you so, he's rubbish, etc. And he's none of that. He's a really good manager and good coach at this
Yeah.
level. But my expectations are I would take sixth right now, which is unusual because I'm usually enthusiastic and whatever. I'm usually saying, bring it on. We're never going to be top two. We're not a top two team. We'd love one of those seasons that Burnley had a few years ago, or Leeds have occasionally where you just run away with the league title and stuff. But we're not that club. So if we can be in and around the playoffs come March and we have a late push rather than a late capitulation and we're competitive for the season, you look at it and say, well, okay, is it progress? No, but it's bedding in ready for progress next season. A lot of Borough fans haven't got that patience or that IQ, shall we say, and some of the people I speak to, they go, oh, we should be top two. We're a big club. Well, there are loads of big clubs in the Championship, aren't there?
Yeah. I also think, Middlesbrough have sometimes been we've been the downfall of our own success in terms of players we've bought. Season before last, I think we were actually starting to really click when Morgan Rogers was sold to Villa. He was just starting to become the player that we'd scouted, and then Villa were like, "Aye, aye, he's a great player. We'll nab him."
Yeah.
Then last season, losing Latte Lath at the wrong time, you know, sometimes things are out of your hands a little bit, and you do have to start again in terms of new players coming in. And
Yeah.
I wish fans sometimes would just realise that it's hard. Sometimes you get the gel really quickly, it happens really quickly, but other times it doesn't. But part of the joy and the interest for me is seeing how it can develop, hopefully over the next year or so. If you can see they're doing well and they're building momentum and
Mm.
consistency, that's all good, and that is progress, because it means that, for me, I think if we were more consistent and won more games, that would be progress for Middlesbrough, because we've done it and bedded ourselves in terms of being firm top six rather than always in and around it.
If we don't lose 26 points from winning positions this season, I'll be a happy man, because that's
Yeah,
what we lost last season.
that
And that
wasn't it. It's a lot of points. That
that was
huge.
like watching the same video every
Yeah,
week, week in, week out. And if we don't do that, I'll be happy. Now, I was going to say we're going to do two subjects in this episode, but I'm conscious of the fact I'd like to keep the episodes a little bit sort of shorter and sharper. We've been guilty the last couple of episodes, Dom, of talking for a long time now. I
yeah,
hope I hope people are stuck with us. That's fine. We were going to talk about fixture list of Sky fixture timings, and we'll put that to one side and we'll cover that now as a separate episode.
yes,
But I think for now, when we talk about kind of the ambition, the what represents success for fans and clubs, I think that puts a nice line under it. What are we looking for? What do we think fans are looking for? And I'd be interested in the notes. I'd be interested in comments. I'd be interested in feedback from the audience as to, who do you support and what does that look like? I've recently connected with, just randomly, a little pocket of fans who are Norwich fans, and they've obviously just kind of shared the podcast with each other and that kind of thing. And Norwich, you talk about ambition. In the Championship, there must be 14 clubs, 15 clubs who've got an ambition to finish in the top six.
Yeah.
They all can't. Norwich are definitely one of them. So I just wonder what Norwich fans think. I wonder what we know what Birmingham fans think. I wonder what fans of other clubs think at Birmingham, Bristol City, for example. What does success look like? So if you want to put some notes in, you want to make some comments, you want to engage with Dom and I, and whether you're a Premier League fan, Championship fan, League One, League Two, even down National League, etc. What does success look like? Because I'm always intrigued as to whether it's realistic or not, or whether or not that the club themselves have got a different ambition than the fans, and that's why we had the podcast episode that we did, Dom. So, anything to add to that before we do the sort of final notes and things?
I would agree completely with that, Nick. I would say to people, please, if you're listening and you're interested, please put some comments and some feedback on there. I, as a fan, I love the neutrality of what we do here. I'd love to hear from fans of other clubs what their opinions are, because if we get comments and we get feedback and we get notes, we'll look at them and we'll discuss them in future episodes. There's nothing wrong with coming back to this subject in a further episode, but instead of talking about from mine and Nick's point of view, from your points of view as fans, what you like and what you expect for the season for your clubs, and then we can get more involved, because the more community we get and the more comments we get, the more we can bring it into our podcast and discuss it. It becomes more of a community show in terms of that's what we want to champion, really. Your
Excellent.
thoughts as well as fans? Yeah.
We do. Okay, Dom. Well, I'll just do the screen share for those who are watching on YouTube. That was what represents success for fans and clubs. We didn't do the fixture list and Sky fixture timings, but we will do that going forward. On the next episode, we're looking at what are we looking forward to for the new season? That is a definite single subject, because there's a lot of things that we've got in our kind of discussion topics. Dom and I are going to look at that in a bit of detail on episode 7, but we've now got fixture lists and Sky fixture timings to add to that later on. And we've got other subjects that we'd like you to share with us that you want us to talk about. We've got plenty on our radar, but some of the subjects we're already talking about have been inspired by comments from people saying, "Oh, what about this and what about that?" And I've got a great one to share a little bit further down the line. So, without further ado, I'd like to say thank you very much, Dom, again for being on the episode with me. It's great fun sharing these conversations with a really good mate. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. If you could share and give us a 5-star review as well, they just really help with the numbers. We're trying to get this off the ground. We're getting quite a bit of early traction, which is really good and we're really proud of. But it's a starting point, really. iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, Audible, LinkedIn group, YouTube, anywhere you can find us. Any comments, any sharing, any likes. So if you're a football fan and you watch this and listen to this on your way to the game and you've got some mates with you, just make sure they do as well. So thank you very much. And we'll see you all again on a very future episode very soon. Thanks very much, folks. Thanks, Dom.
Cheers, Nick. And I'd voice exactly the same as Nick on that. Cheers, guys, for listening and tuning in. We really appreciate it. Keep it coming.